Good evening, good morning, wherever you may be. Streaming to you from the East Coast to the left coast and around the world on UCY.tv. This is All Things Apocalyptic with your host, G. Michael Hopf. How is everybody doing? I hope you're doing okay. Everyone's being safe, sound, wherever you might be. I'm doing okay. Today was a really good day. Yesterday was really awesome. For those that have read my apocalyptic series and are following my books, I turned in the final edits to the publisher yesterday. That's for book 4. It's titled The Line of Departure, so I'm really, really excited about that. So now things are progressing, probably looking at a release date for book 4 sometime winter. I'm shooting for, my fingers crossed, Christmas time, but that's probably not going to happen. It's going to be more like January 20. So really excited about that. Glad to get that kind of completed and finished. Other than that, you might hear some ice clinking in a glass. That's kind of me self-medicating myself on some Templeton rye. Anyway, I'm not sure if anyone out there is a whiskey drinker or a rye whiskey drinker, but I am. And if you've ever, and by the way, I don't promote this because I get paid, but Templeton rye is amazingly smooth whiskey. If you've never tried it, I highly suggest it. So I'm medicating myself because I continuously have this problem with my right Achilles. And it's like I had a rupture from doing sprints like a year ago, and it just won't seem to go away. So I went for a run today at about 4 miles, and my Achilles is just flared up again, and it's just a pain in the ass. I'm just tired of it. But I got to stay fit, got to be active. Fitness is a part of for me, it's one of the biggest preps I think that people overlook as far as being prepared for what might come. Or they can have the water, or the fire, or the food, but if you can't pack your shit and haul it somewhere, what good are you if you can't handle yourself physically? So that's just my 2 cents on that. But a lot of stuff going on around the world. I mean, I'm sure everyone's quite aware and been informed about that second American journalist that was beheaded by Islamic State. Those are just a bunch of nice guys over there. I feel sorry for him. It's sad situation. Something that so I'm cruising Drudge Report right now, and what's interesting is in Tripoli, you've got the militia there that's kind of taken over Libya for the most part. But 11 commercial airliners have disappeared from the Tripoli airport in Libya. So obviously, there's a lot of people with a lot of speculation on where they might be and what they might be used for. But there's a lot of stuff about ISIS, ISIL, Islamic State, whatever you want to call those sons of bitches. There's a lot of things in the news about them. But one thing that and I had a show a couple weeks ago about this, about pandemics and Ebola. And in some ways, I'm not that concerned, but it doesn't seem to be it's not really the prominent thing in the news right now, but it seems to still be in the news in the aspect I'm on Drudge right now, and CDC director is talking about Ebola outbreak spiraling out of control. Obviously, he's referencing in Africa. It's going to be getting worse in the very near future. That's another quote from him. Apparently, there's another American doctor that's been infected over in Africa. There's now also a Congo outbreak, and that strain is genetically unrelated to the West African strain. If you read that article, if you read that link, you follow that link through from the Drudge Report, it kind of sounds like that's a good thing. I don't know if it is or not. And it just keeps going. There's about 5 or 6 links here about the Ebola outbreak and pandemic that's happening over in Africa, and it just seems to be something that's definitely not going away, even though there's all this other stuff that's happening in the news. If it's not, I mean, obviously the big thing is obviously the American journalist being beheaded. But if that wasn't happening, we'd be hearing about Justin Bieber and him getting arrested, or this complete viral hacking of all these Hollywood celebrities and all these nude photos of women flying around. That seems really, really big. But that in itself is kind of interesting topic. I was listening to the last show, and they were discussing it, and I don't think anyone is surprised that we don't have privacy anymore. And in some ways, there's kind of, I think we want to have that. I think we want to expect it, but I think an expectation, whether it's the government snooping on us, which they're doing every second of the day, and gathering as much information as they possibly can, or Apple is. One thing that struck me was interesting to me was one of the actresses claimed that the photographs she had deleted years ago, and then there they are. So I don't know how the cloud works. I don't know if if she did delete them from her device, but they're still in the cloud and didn't delete them from her cloud, or she did delete them from the cloud, but Apple still kept that information. What does that say? So, again, I think any kind of level of expectation of privacy on the web, no one should have it. I think we all should know that. So if you have that, I think you're obviously kind of naive in this world today. Let's swing back around to the pandemic stuff, because I've mentioned before pandemics as from a kind of an apocalyptic thing is one of the things that scares me kind of the most, because it seems very unmanageable and out of control. And it's where I think the EMPs or nuclear weapons being detonated, obviously unless you're at ground zero type of thing. Though a lot of those things, or even economic collapse, whatnot, grid down types of situations, I think can be managed. A pandemic this scares me. And it's just because it's kind of that silent killer. You don't know what you're touching or whatnot, or where you're going, if it's infected or not. So it's just one of those things that exist out there. They do happen. We've had them before. We've had these pandemics that have gone out and they've killed tens of thousands and millions of people around the world before. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of a matter of when, not if, something like that's going to happen again in the future. So tonight I've got a wonderful guest on. She's a native of South Texas. She now lives in the beautiful state of Washington. She's a veteran of the U.S. Air Force Reserves. She was a radio operator when she was in the service. She's an entrepreneur, business owner, and now is a writer of apocalyptic fiction. I'm very excited to have on the show A.R. Shaw. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
How you doing tonight?
Pretty good.
Or morning, or wherever you might be.
Early evening.
Okay. So, A.R., tell us or tell the listeners a little bit more about you and who you are and specifically your books you've got out there.
Okay, yeah. I came out with the China pandemic last year, and it deals with H5N1 running amok. Actually, it's more of a weaponized a drug dealing with, a virus that was, unleashed on the globe. And it's done really well. I've been really surprised with it. I had not written anything before. My kids started going off to college, and it was time to either adopt a new one or start writing or going to work or something. So I took a chance. I started writing, and it hit #1 in May of this year, and in post-apocalyptic and dystopian. So it's doing really well.
Well, I apologize. I should have introduced you as a best-selling author.
Oh, we've all been there.
So you've got two books out there. You've got it's all part of Graham's Resolution series.
That's right.
And the first book is the China Pandemic. Why don't you tell? Why don't we kind of dive into that, because that's something that I think is a real possibility. Is not just kind of a natural type of pandemic or a virus, but one that's actually weaponized. And speaking of kind of going back to this ISIS thing that I was talking about earlier, here there was a laptop found, and supposedly a terrorist laptop, and on there they found files and they were discussing about weaponizing the bubonic plague. Did you hear about that in the news?
I did. I read a little about that. It's just too easy to find. Whenever I was writing my series, I wanted to start with a guy who was not a prepper, who had no idea what he was doing. I wanted a regular guy. So once I got that formulated, I was looking for the right, reasonable, virus that someone would weaponize. And it was so easy to find H5N1 as being that candidate. Because it has actually, it's been manipulated to be airborne by these scientists already in real life. So it was just very easy to use that in the series. So yeah, it is very scary. Pandemics are, sadly, they are sitting in these different laboratories around the globe, and there's I think it was the Ebola, Ebola virus. It's not a virus. Well, I guess it is. It's a virus, and it was missing. It's been missing from a Galveston, Texas laboratory for like 10 years now. They've never found it. They don't know where it is or what happened to it.
I'd heard about that. Was it when kind of the big talk of this latest outbreak with Ebola?
Right.
I saw that article floating around. It was an old article. It was from a few years ago, and it talked about that
Right.
missing. And you hear about that all the time. These laboratories that have these viruses, that have these deadly diseases, and how they're working on them. You know, some of them say they were actually working on them to perfect vaccines,
Yeah.
or just to study them. But it's how just they're careless sometimes, and they'll find deadly diseases in a broom closet. You know, when they're doing audits of the facility, or they're cleaning the facility, and that kind of stuff that's just one. It's most of these labs tend to be kind of, they're government run. Even if they're private, they're for the most part they've been essentially annexed by the government as far as most of their funding comes from that. Even though they might be private labs, and it's just the pure incompetence, and that's what that worries me as well. Is like somebody would just slip up, if not even just slip up, someone would just could be. If there's not tracking that kind of stuff, I mean, how easy is it? Well, let's go to your book. So you have this H5N1 virus, and it's weaponized. Mm-hmm. How is it deployed?
I didn't really go into that specifically. Actually, I'm going back to, I dealt with more the survival of the remaining few survivors in book 1. With book 2, it was more of them learning how to live again. Book 3, what I'm working on right now is actually that, them going back and realizing that it was weaponized and who weaponized it. So there's going to be a lot more action in book 3, but it will deal with how it actually happened.
And as far as your version of a weaponized H5N1 virus, what's the death toll?
Oh, it was 98%, but this is fiction. But H5N1 has been, so there's, in nature right now, there are only 5 mutations for it to be airborne. That means transmissible from person to person, right? And the Dutch scientist 2 years ago, they actually manipulated that in a lab. So this does exist. There is a H5N1 that is airborne in a laboratory. And their reason for doing that was just to say, why not manipulate it in a lab and learn from that process, so that, because it's going to happen in nature anyway. That's the excuse they used. And then the Dutch government found out what they were doing and actually sued Ron Fouchier over it. And now he has to have permission from the government before he publishes any of his works. So it was very, very dangerous. It was a very dangerous thing to do. But this still exists, and it's in laboratories as it is. And it's sad because anyone can... You hate to think of someone being compromised to get something like that can harm the globe, but it can happen. So. Oh,
no, well, without a doubt it can happen. In nature, doing with your research on your books, in nature, how long would it take for something like H5N1 to mutate naturally, organically?
I mean, it's happened in the past where it's 1 or 2 mutations a year. It didn't take them very long to do it. It was like a year. And how they do this is they took ferrets, right? Ferrets have an immune system that's very similar to our own. So they took one ferret and injected him with the actual live virus, the regular virus, right? And they put ferrets in other air-chambered compartments in rows. And then they exposed them only through the ventilation system. And it just took a matter of time before the mutations happened. So, and then they just extracted it from the last ferret, and that was it. So then they actually made, with the use of a ferret immune system, a live airborne virus.
Yes, outstanding.
Wonderful. Yeah. Scary.
Yeah. Well, it would be fascinating just to to really know. I guess fascinating from a macabre kind of way, but just what they're actually doing there. What's actually really going on in some of those labs, what they're creating. I know a lot of it's under the guise that they're doing it so that if it does mutate in nature, or if it possibly could be weaponized by somebody, they then could probably respond much quicker with a quote unquote vaccine. But it would be fascinating to see exactly what's really going on in those laboratories around the world. It's not just here in the United States. It's around the world.
And who's backing them? And those are the ones we know about.
Yeah, well, and that's it. You know, there was always this. This doesn't have to do with pandemics, but there was always. I think it was a time when Jeffrey Dahmer, with being the serial killer kind of thing, came out, and the FBI released some information, and it says for every one Jeffrey Dahmer that they catch, there's 25 others that they don't.
Oh, that's horrifying.
And so there's those numbers, and again, there's no direct correlation, but it kind of goes in the. I mean, so for the accidents we hear about, or the misplaced vial of a deadly smallpox or whatever they have, how many are incidents do we not hear about? Right.
There was an article just released last week about the CDC screw up where they actually took the airborne H5N1 and mixed it with the regular one, and the guy was late for a meeting, so he mixed it in a tube and sent it off to another lab through the mail. So yeah, very scary. I mean, someone else said that they were really the Center for Disease Propagation because they've screwed up so much. It's just frightening. And then the other thing that's concerning me lately, this is the one thing I've been kind of tracking. So there was an Ebola patient in the United States who was being held in New Mexico, in Albuquerque. Now, it takes like 10 days for those test results to come back, and it should have been due day before yesterday. And there's still no mention of positive or negative. In fact, there are 7 people in the whole United States who are being held with suspicion of Ebola. And so far, their test results have still not come back.
Now, see, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's part of the news where it's not in the news anymore.
Exactly.
It's like Ebola was like hip and fun and cool to talk about, but now it's like it's not there. And it's off the headlines for the most part. But even though you're saying 7 people that have been quarantined around the United States, and they're suspected of having Ebola, but no mention of it in the news. And by the way, we're never going to hear about it now. Not with what's happening over in Iraq and Syria, what's happened with poor Jennifer Lawrence and her Apple iCloud account being hacked. We're not going to hear about that stuff now.
Yeah, I don't even watch the mainstream news. I search. I have news feeds that come to me in other ways. I think the mainstream news is really a waste of most people's time. That's really not what's going on in the world. So.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I peruse a lot of alternative news sources to try to get information, and it's because they're not controlled by corporate entities, and they're out there to make business. I mean, the end result is they're a for-profit business. And they're putting out what their corporate sponsors want them to put out. So that's interesting. So there should have been some results for this patient in New Mexico. So where are the other 6 suspected Ebola patients?
I don't really know. I just read this recently in an article by Reuters. So it's out there. So I'm not sure where they are in the U.S. It just mentioned that there were 7 detainees, basically. So.
Nice. So in the China pandemic, so you've got the H5N1. So take kind of, without giving away too many spoilers in your first book, kind of take the listeners through kind of what they'll get out of the book when they pick it up and read it. The first one.
I think that what I've gotten back mostly from people is that it's very realistic. That they think that the characters are very real, the emotions are real, what people would go through is very real. So what happens is it's a regular guy, he buries his family in the backyard, it's just him. And then, I don't mind talking about this part, and then another mother in the neighborhood, in her neighborhood in Seattle, her family dies, and she realizes that she's dying, but her 5-year-old son is not. And so she has a choice to make. She either takes his life or she finds someone to care for him. And she settles on Graham and transfers her child to this stranger, this man that she doesn't know, right before her death. So it's about, him taking this kid and leaving town, and dealing with natural predators and that kind of thing, and crazy people who are off their meds, and things have been gone for a while. So if with that much population loss, you would deal with a lot of loss of infrastructure.
Oh, yeah, complete collapse.
Yeah. So that's really, I needed to make it really bad, and then they as he's going up to his cabin, he deals with a lot of issues, comes in contact with a lot of other characters. And then he also runs into a group of preppers that are up in this area who knew about the virus. It's a more of that prepper fiction. These people have already made it up there. The problem is, though, is they're still susceptible to the virus. Graham and his group, they're survivors of it. They're immune somehow. But this other group are still very vulnerable to it. And so they deal with how to live together but apart, at the same time, and without killing one another. So that's pretty much what book 1 is about. Book 2, I go into more of them struggling day to day with one another and how to live in this world again. So, yeah, it's kind of a Murphy situation in book 2. Whatever will go wrong will go wrong.
Now, how much time passes in book 1?
Now, I did this, I tried to do this seasonally. So the first book, it's really kind of 3 months, August through October. And then the next book is the 3 months of winter. So I'm trying to do 4 in a season. So my next book this book 3 will be the spring season, and then summer after that.
Well, as people would probably say in the Cascades, mud season.
Exactly. Yeah. Season. Yeah.
Now, so apocalyptic fiction. Why apocalyptic fiction for you? I mean, I know why I did it. I mean, it's always fun to talk to other writers that are in this genre and see why. So
yeah, I'm the odd girl out. It's kind of funny. I'm a girly girl, but I'm a mom. But I was also in the Air Force Reserves, and I was a radio operator, and lived in a man's world, that kind of thing. And I don't know, I've always been kind of drawn to the apocalyptic genre. It's just something I've always enjoyed. I've read, I have since I started writing it, though, I've had to stop reading it. And that's been very difficult because I really love that genre. And I just I don't want anyone else's ideas floating through my head, while I'm writing. So I don't read it anymore, and that's a real sad thing. But I've read all the girl books. I've read romances and adventures, but I tend to be more drawn to male writers, and so I read a lot of action books and things that men would write. It's really funny.
Now, is it? I know for me, what draws me to it is kind of the human condition. Because I think apocalyptic fiction has a way of really you're able to kind of peel the layers of the onion away and really get at what drives people. And so often we operate in this world because we choose to, and it's only because we relatively feel safe for the most part. But you remove that kind of that safety blanket that can peel away. You get to really see who people are and how they act or react to things. And I explore that in my books, and that's what I find fascinating about it. I obviously have a vision that's dark and foreboding. Only because I think at the root, I think there are good people, but I think there's a lot of bad people, and I think a lot of bad stuff would happen if you were to kind of strip away that security blanket. Do you think? You write apocalyptic fiction. You have a pandemic kind of as the thing that brings about the end of the world as we know it. Was there a reason why you used that? Or pandemics out of all the other kind of situations that could occur? Is that something that you're most fearful of?
Yeah, I would say that is the one thing that I am most afraid of. As I don't know if it's just being a mom or what it is, but that's the one thing that you cannot really defend yourself from it. I mean, we're dealing with a lot of crazy things in our reality right now, many different enemies. But if a pandemic comes through and you have to feed your child, you're going to expose them to feed your child. You know, it's very hard to defend yourself from. A husband or the male in your life will go out and they'll gun down anyone who's trying to attack you, but there's nothing you can do about that. You know, it really tears at your heartstrings. You can isolate yourself, but you cannot live alone, not forever. So it's the worst thing that I can see happening.
Yeah, I know. I have that same fear, and you know, I think other things are manageable. I think other kind of events are managed. You know, if you have some kind of a deadly virus or disease that spreads, you're right. You know, can you just quarantine yourself for an extended period of time? Absolutely, but eventually you're going to have to go out. Eventually you will go out, or eventually people will come to you.
Right.
And then what happens, again, if it was an EMP, you can see that person and you'd be afraid of them or wary of them, but now you're seeing that person and you just don't know. You don't know when you do venture out what you touch, what you can, you know. I mean, I don't know very many people that have, you know, full mop suits, full type of, you know, equipment like that. They're going to wear constantly all the time. And so if you're in some kind of a viral situation, it's, to me, again, and maybe it's because I'm a father, you know, I'm a parent, but protecting my children against that, for me, it's frightening. Above all the other scenarios that exist out there, that one freaks me out the most.
Yeah, I've had people ask me about this recently, and I said, you know, out of everything that's going on in the news right now, really watch the Ebola situation. That's the most important out of everything else that's happening. I mean, sure, pay attention to it, but don't discount that.
Yeah, you know, although, because I am afraid, I did look into the numbers a couple weeks ago, and it is, you know, relatively speaking, it is something, when I have to sit back and, you know, you ever wake up in the middle of the night? I bet you everybody does this. You wake up in the middle of the night and you go at 2 and 3 in the morning, you're like, oh my God, you worry about whatever you're worrying about. And,
calm yourself down.
Yeah,
you know.
And the thing is, you know, I do worry about these things, and some people say I shouldn't worry about it too much. And I said, well, it's only you probably get it too. We're kind of in this world. We're in this space. We write doomsday stuff, and so that's where our heads are a lot of time. And so I've been told sometime, my wife goes, you know, you really maybe you should take a little bit of a break because you're just like Mr. Doom and Gloom all the time. And and so I was like, you know, so I was kind of like a little concerned about the Ebola outbreak a few weeks ago. So I started looking at some numbers. And if you really look at it statistically, I know. We have a greater chance, and I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, we have a greater chance of going to the hospital for a broken arm, catching a staph infection, and dying from that than catching Ebola and dying.
Yeah, that's totally true. And then after I thought that, you know, really, you can get a staph infection much easier than you can get this. And then the WHO came out and said that they're expecting over 20,000 cases now. It's out of control. Yeah, I'm going, oh, great.
But still, if you look at 20,000, that's still, again, and it's also it's isolated, you know, over and after, unless we have 7 people here. Yeah. But we do also have an infrastructure in place. So I mean, there are things that I get concerned, and then I go, well, wait a minute, there is an infrastructure in place, blah 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 blah. That what's that?
That's in control of by the CDC.
Yeah, but and then I'm like a yo-yo with this, because then I'm like, well, wait a minute, these guys can't set up a health website to work, so now I'm really worried again, you know, and so, you know, can these guys really, you know, what can they really do? So then it always goes back, like, and it was right during that whole Ebola. I mean, I like doubled my preps. I mean, I like double the amount of water. I got more food. I just stockpiled the hell out of shit. And I was like, really? I'm like, you just don't know.
You can't do that. You can't do that. You know, the one thing you have to say, and this is what I've got fans that ask me about this, and they're worried about it. And I've said, you know, the best thing you can do is pay attention to what's out there. You know, be informed. Don't depend on the major news, but be informed of what's going on. And if you have to pull your kids out of school for a few days until you know that it's safe, that's fine. Go ahead. But it's just a couple of days. Just be prepared and be ready. Have 2 weeks of food in your home, but don't go crazy. So because you've done your research on this, and it is something that is the most fearful type of an apocalyptic situation who occurred for you, what have you and your family done to protect against this, or what
would you recommend to people?
I haven't done anything. No, nothing at all.
Really?
Yeah, I don't want anyone at my door. No. No. So we are totally.
Got it. I hear what you're saying. You've done nothing.
I've done nothing, and anyone who says they're doing things should not say that. Yeah, no, I haven't done a thing, and but obviously, you just have to be smart about it. You just tell them you've got to, have at least 2 weeks worth of food, have gas in your car at all times. The one thing I do tell everyone is you really need to keep bug out bags. Just please do that, and keep your car, filled up. That's the least amount of things you should do, and it should have 3 days worth of food and water. Even when I sent my son off to college, he's got one. My daughter in Texas, who works at Halliburton, she's got one. They just keep them in their car, and if something happens, then they're ready. They're prepared for it. They don't have to worry about it. That's the big thing.
Okay. So all your kids are grown up and out of the house?
No, I still have one more at home. I've got one overseas, and that scares me. She works. She's an intern in Brussels, so that worries me. I want to say don't fly if you can keep from it. I've got a kid in Brussels, so that's frightening. It's very scary. So yeah, if something happens there, They have a lot of security. She's with the U.S. government there, and I just have to depend on them to do the right thing and get her home. That's it. So, yeah. And I thought, my daughter lives in Texas. I live here in Washington. So, and that's the American family these days. You're spread out all over the place. And all you can tell them is to sit tight. Hopefully it'll blow over. Try not to fly if it's a viral type of situation. So,
yeah, that's the thing. It's a virus that's airborne would go around the world so fast.
Yeah,
it would just be astonishing. It would be. I mean, if you go back just to 100 years ago in the Spanish flu and how quickly that actually went around the world. Yeah. And there was no aircraft really then. You're a mass transit or commercial aircraft. Everyone was essentially to get from here to Europe. You took a transatlantic cruise liner, and how quickly that went around the world. And it would probably realistically you could have a virus go around the world in less than 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. That's a scary thought, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but again, I think it's a matter, and I think it's a matter of when, not if, that something's going to happen. There seems to be, and again, this goes back to we were talking about the mainstream news that's out there, and sometimes the mainstream news I think can be used for putting out a certain amount of information to essentially get ourselves mentally prepared for things to happen. Mm-hmm. Whether that be the militarization of law enforcement that we see everywhere, back in Ferguson you saw a lot of that. But you see it everywhere. Mm-hmm. Even when you had the Boston Marathon bombing, you had you literally had an army cruising through neighborhoods in Boston. Yeah. To having checkpoints. I know living out in Southern California, and it's been this way for years and years, where you have Border Patrol checkpoints that are 40, 50 miles from the border. Mm-hmm. And I've always laughed about that. And I was like, why? And it's because I believe that they are trying to prepare or create a mindset of going through checkpoints by armed police and dogs and things along that line. And think about how many checkpoints. If you're out here, if you're up in Temecula and you had to go to the airport in San Diego, you drive past one and you go down, and in the airport and you go through another checkpoint. There's checkpoints all over the place. And with the news, and so you see these things that are planted in the news, and I just think that there's other stuff at play, and I think that's happening when, again, like we were talking about, what are we not seeing? What do we not know about that's happening right now?
Yeah, I don't know. You can't really worry about it. You've got to you have to be smart about things and just keep yourself and your family in a state of mind that is sane. You've got to pick up on things, and like you said, you do prepare a little bit and you wait and see what happens.
Wait, are you saying it's not? Are you saying it's insane to worry about this stuff?
I think you can go.
then I am insane.
No, I think the good things that we have going is that there's the ZMapp drug that they're trying to develop super quick. So that is something that's kind of cool. Now there is no vaccine for Ebola, but there is the ZMapp drug, and it's an antibody. It's actually 3 antibodies that they've merged together, and they're manufacturing it in tobacco plants. Out of the 3 people it was first tried on, the Spanish priest and the 2 doctors, the Spanish priest still died right away. So it's not a vaccine. It's an antibody that helps boost their immune system. So the two doctors made it, but the Spanish priest, it didn't help him at all. He died of it. And the death rate right now for Ebola is 52%. So and it keeps going down. It's the weirdest thing. I've seen at first it was something like 68%, and now it's continuously going down. So maybe they're getting better at treating it. I don't know.
And on a positive note, I guess that death rate is also in Africa, in third world countries where they don't necessarily have the first world type facilities and healthcare that we have. So I mean, if we had something like an outbreak here, which would be horrible, ours would definitely be less. It would be. Yeah, I don't know what that number would be, but it would definitely be less. But I would hate to see it. But there was in the news something else. There was just recently about in Kansas City, I think, or in St. Louis, about it's like last week about enterovirus. Have you heard about that?
No, huh?
It's not really a life-threatening, but it's a virus that's it's affected children all throughout I think it's the St. Louis metro area, and they don't see what was fascinating about the article is the doctors who were treating all of these dozens of kids were coming in, and it was right around the time that school started. And because having kids yourself, schools are like little petri dishes as far as diseases flying, or colds and viruses and everything else flying around at schools. But they commented that the enterovirus is not unknown; it's unknown in the United States.
Oh, great. Okay.
And now it's essentially it's just like a bad cold, or it's in your lungs. You need a lot of coughing, labored breathing, things along that line. But it stays with you for a very long time. And it's just now there obviously are people. Some people are probably thinking that it's been introduced by maybe all these illegal immigrants coming across from third world countries into our, and then going from these depots and then essentially transplanted around the United States. It's hard to know because here you go, here you have something that's not prevalent in the United States that now is out of nowhere. Yeah.
And I got to say that's more of to me that would be something more of a border patrol issue where what they really need to do is, and I know it's a lot of money, more money on our parts, but we need to health screen these people and make sure that they're healthy, before you cart them all over the U.S. That just seems like common sense to me. But
yeah, right. I know. So I pulled up the article. It was it's on a website called Outbreak News Today, and it was a Missouri health officials issue alert for enterovirus D68 outbreak. It was in the Kansas City metro area.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did see something about that.
It's respiratory illness. And it's not seen in the United States until now. So it just kind of show you even that viruses can sneak across the border. They can come through airports, screenings. That's something that, again, this isn't deadly, but what if this was? Here we are.
Yeah, and what will it mutate into? That's my next thought all the time.
Yeah, the mutation. Now, now you've obviously done a lot of research on Ebola and done a lot of reading on it. What have you? And I saw some articles a few weeks ago about it potentially being or about it had mutated at one time into an airborne thing or not. There's these different strains of it. What have you read about that? What can you tell the listeners? Is there any kind of? Well, I think there is a chance, but has it ever become an airborne type virus?
Gosh, I want to err on saying no. So I read everything I can find about this. I have the news feeds that come in from everywhere for that. And what I've read so far is that it is acting like a mild airborne issue. and they've tested it. They're saying it is not airborne. But no matter how much the healthcare workers follow every single these are volunteers that are coming into Africa to work. So it's not like these are untrained people who they bring in to work on everyone. These are trained health officials who are contracting Ebola, suited up. So it's not supposed to be airborne, but it certainly has acted this way. The new doctor that you were talking about earlier, the one that just contracted it, he's actually an obstetrician. He wasn't even in the Ebola camp. Never was in the Ebola camp. Now he is.
Yeah.
So he came down with it as an obstetrician. So he wasn't prepared for it, though. I don't. In my mind, I don't think he was prepared for it. He was probably suited as a doctor, so he wasn't suited up for it. So that's how he contracted it. And the other thing that a lot of people aren't really talking about, I saw a couple articles on this, is that this is weird, but so the great apes or the primates in the African area are actually dying of this. They have it, and dogs can carry it. And so, so someone, I don't know if it was PETA or who it was, I don't know, but they were very concerned about the gorillas dying off, the primates dying off of this, and we weren't doing enough to take care of that. So you can contract it from monkeys and apparently from dogs. So that's pretty scary too. How do you control that?
Well, you just have to kill all the feral dogs that are running around. There was being serious. I mean, you'd have to. That'd be the only way to truly contain it. I mean, I guess in the United States we probably wouldn't do something like that if we had a massive outbreak. We would probably just try to corral them up.
Sure. But I mean, the primates that are out in the jungle, and this is how this mutates, right? It goes from animal to animal and it mutates. And then a child's playing with a monkey, I'm assuming, or I don't know, in some places they do eat the monkeys, and they contract a new form of this, and then it starts all over again with a new variation, a new mutation. So it's frightening, and the only thing you can do is just hope that it doesn't get worse and prepare if it does.
Yeah, I did read an article about it wasn't the dogs contracting it. Essentially, it was they're not managing kind of the corpses in a lot of these villages, and so they're literally like leaving them in the street or shallow graves. And the feral dogs are digging in or eating the corpses.
Right. Yeah. No, I did read that as well. But before that, I don't know. I read this. I'm not sure if it's true or not. But that dogs are carriers of the Ebola virus. So I'm not totally sure on that. I would have to research that more. It was just an article that I read.
That's not nice. Because then what other animals are then? What if it becomes a flying animal like a bird? And then it could be carried much further. I mean, a dog only has a certain amount of reach it's going to have. Once you start getting birds or something like that, and I
think we've gone off the author deep end where we start imagining worse and worse.
Well, that's the fun part. I mean, but the thing is, what authors or people that do movies or anyone that kind of creates fiction, so often though, reality. You've heard the old phrase, reality can be stranger than fiction, and that's the case, really. There's stuff that happens. You just go, I couldn't even write that. That's just so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what's going on right now with Russia and the ISIS and everything at once. If you wrote something like that, and I've been accused of this, too much action, not realistic. That's what's going on now.
No, yeah, I know what you mean. Like that could never happen. These scenarios, would never play out. I know, and it's like really. There's a lot of other crazy stuff that goes on all the time that had you mentioned it the day before something like that were to happen. Imagine being on September 10th of 2001 and go, someone's going to do this and this is going to happen. It's going to equal that. It's going to equal that. And then those two buildings are going to come crashing to the ground. Oh, that would never happen.
It's crazy.
And then something like that happens. So,
sad to say it did. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is that is how the reality of things is actually is just can be like fiction. And
yeah, and what's today? Today's September 2nd.
Yeah, and well, that's what I was when I mentioned. There's like that report, 11 commercial airliners missing from Tripoli airport in Libya, and now obviously everyone's like what's going on? Is it will it be a false flag type of thing, or do legitimate Islamist fascists have it? Or they so what's going on? The thing is, there are 11 commercial airliners are missing. September 11th holiday is right around the corner, or not holiday, but anniversary is right around the corner. And obviously that dealt with airliners, and so it's natural reaction to go, well, they're being used for something.
Yeah. Let's just hope someone forgot they're in a shop somewhere being fixed.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I know.
That's very wishful thinking, AR.
I'm fine.
You're quite the optimist for an apocalyptic author.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be more doom and gloom. I mean, come on.
No, because I'll be up till 2. Thinking of these things.
You're not. So the Graham's Resolution series is going to be 4 books. So you're saying it goes along the seasons, correct?
Yes, that's what I have planned for this year. The first 4 books. After that, I'm going to see what the fans think. If I should, I think there's more books in this, but I may just spin off and do something else for a little bit, and then come back to it, or continue on with it. I'm not sure yet.
So you're currently working on book number 3 right now.
Yes, I am.
And when can people expect that?
Oh, I hate that question. What month are we in? September? Maybe by Christmas. I'm not going to say it will be out by Christmas, but I'm hoping that it will be out by Christmas.
Okay. Can you share with us the title of that book?
I don't have it yet.
You don't have that yet. So there's no title reveal on my show.
No, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I understand. So are you besides that? Are you writing other stuff? Are you working on anything else that you'd like to share with us?
I've been kind of researching my great great grandfather was actually a deputy sheriff for a little county called Refugio in Texas, and he was called with the Texas Rangers way back when they were chasing down Pancho Villa, and so anyway, I've been kind of researching that more, and there's a lot more to that story than they teach in history class, I must say. And so I'll be writing kind of a fictionalized version of that. It'll be kind of a Western, which is really funny. But so I'm kind of working on that on the sideline, and then continuing with this series, and I'm just trying to really focus on the series first before I move on. You always have these extra ideas, and I will write them down and stuff them in my drawer just to get them out of my head, so I can just focus on the series. But so far, that's really what I have planned. I have ideas, but that's what I have planned.
Okay, that's good. I had Annie Burdell on a few weeks ago. I'm not sure if you listened to that show, and it is refreshing. I do think that the post-apocalyptic dystopian genre is really dominated by male authors. And so it is refreshing to have a female point of view or a female voice that's added to it. Are you seeing more women kind of entering into that are entering into the genre?
I know. Yeah, I was happy to find out Annie was coming in, so that was fantastic. But no, there's zombie writers who are females, and obviously they're post-apocalyptic, but
yeah.
Gosh, I can't name one right now. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting somebody, but it's mostly a man's world. But that's okay. I've dealt with men, so.
Yeah, it is, but I found I've looked at my demographic of the readers of my series, and it's almost evenly split.
Gosh, mine's 40-60, 40 males, 50 female.
Yeah, see, and so there's actually it was shocking numbers to the publisher and other people to know that there are a lot of women that are interested in this type of fiction, and they're interested in for a variety of reasons. They I think they like action and adventure. I think it's a lot of them are preppers, homesteaders, survivalists as well, and they can get little tidbits of information as well as being entertained with a good story. But it is, you would think it would be a totally dominated by men readers, but it's really not.
No, it's really not. It's I think as readers go, I loved. I mean, other than a romance novel here or there, I really my favorite thing is post-apocalyptic fiction. I think it's the best thing to write. I really enjoy it. The one thing I was missing in it is some more reality. More just more reality. The one thing I get with my books is that. When you're talking about prepper fiction, I swear that needs to be a little bit of a different genre because there's so much of it out there. It's great to understand and see what kind of weapons and everything you should have and what equipment you should have, and I really love that kind of description when I'm looking for it. But when you just want a story, you just want a story. So anyway, I kind of write the other way, where I don't really go into a lot of description, and I'll get notes from my male readers that will say, this was okay, but she didn't really, I could tell she was a female because she didn't list any of the weapons, or, it's just hilarious, what the readers will write, and then I'll have other females that will come in and say, I really liked that she didn't do that. So.
Yeah, and that's why I think you just kind of have to write to how you write.
Exactly.
Because it's so subjective, and all art forms are, and someone's going to be positive or negative on you just based on their own expectation of what they think they're going to get from whatever they're watching or reading. And I think being a writer, you just kind of have to. I think it's a natural inclination for us to want to have everybody like what we do, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
But it's just not going to happen. And so what you need to do is do what you do best. I mean, you write a great, engaging story. And what's great about your story is it's a human interest story, really, where you've got this the guy's everyday guy, and that's what's so cool about it. And again, that's why I think the apocalypse is so fascinating, is because you have the event, you have the horrors of events, but you're always dealing with people and what they're doing and how they're dealing, and the emotional roller coaster and the chaos of what's happening. So, and you do that very well, and I think that's what people can really get from apocalyptic fiction. Again, that's what's drawn me to it, is creating situations and scenarios that my characters have to make decisions in.
Right. I think there's a place for all of it. It's I always listen to all of my my worst, my absolute worst reviews. I always take what I can from it, from everything. So I appreciate all of it. It's all really good.
All right. So you've got 4 books, or you'll have 4 books. Third one coming. Mm-hmm. We're not going to say Christmas time, and we're not going to give out any titles right now.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you, not. And then and then just research on that. So. What else do you do when you're not writing?
I have 4 children.
Oh, I know, but they're all gone but one. So I mean, are you doing anything else? I think you'd mentioned somewhere you just gotten your radio license.
Oh yeah, that's true. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was out of the whole radio thing forever, and then I see a lot of a good use. Now we're talking about what technical things that you would put in your novel. I see such a great usage for radio in this type of situation. And so I was a radio operator in the military, so I decided to go back a little bit and get my radio license. So now I'm a licensed technician. We call it ham radio technician. And so now I'm working on my general license, which will enable me to do more like Morse code and the farther bandwidths. So yeah, that's what I've been working on that as well.
I believe, and I think that's. I'm glad to hear that, because I think in a grid down scenario, communications are always key, without a doubt. Knowing what's happening around the world is, and I have that in my books, where people just don't know, because I think that's a reality. You're just not going to know what's really happening. and people are going to be left in the dark. People are going to come to their own conclusions about how it happened, what happened, who did it, what, and I think then rumors spread and things go kind of crazy, and then radio operators like you are will be critical.
Oh yeah.
In a grid down situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I worked at a Mars station whenever I was stationed at Kelly Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. So, and I was actually, I know we're getting slow on time here. So whenever I worked there, my boss was actually the first point of contact for the 1985 earthquake in Mexico City. So they had lost communication for days and could not get help in. And finally, my Sergeant Green, was sitting at my desk there at Kelly Air Force Base, and he was their first point of contact. And we sent, medevac people in there and uncovered we saved like 20,000 people who were still under rubble there. It was massive. So the one thing I didn't realize when I first got into this was that Morse code and how many people actually still utilize Morse code in the United States. It's amazing. It's extremely busy. It has not slowed down. So radio is alive and well.
And we'll have to use it when things turn south on us, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we've got about another minute. Why don't you, again, just tell everybody where they can find your stuff, where they can get your books, where they can contact you, your Facebook, your Twitter handles, your website, etc. So why don't you hit everybody up with that right now? Okay,
you can just go to authorarshaw.com, and that's my website. It has all of my social media. My blog is attached to there. I probably blog once a week or so. I'm not really active on it. I'm trying to write. Until I can afford someone to do all that for me, I have to do it myself. So, so you can send me notes from there. You can contact me, and I tweet a lot, so I do have like a pretty big tweeting account, and then I'm also on Facebook. All
right. Well, thank you very much for coming on such a short notice too. I really, really appreciate it. It was fun having you on, and you take care. And everybody, please pick up her books, check out her website. AR, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. And remember, till next week, stay frosty.